Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about Azure AD access reviews for compliance and security. We have two special guests. We have Kyle from Trace3 and Sheikh from Microsoft. Our first guest speaker, Kyle. He has over 20 years experience working within the IT operations, security, compliance, as well as legal arenas. He has in-depth knowledge of security, compliance, and risk management. Also a licensed attorney in California. So therefore, he's able to bridge his expertise in technology with the law. We also have Sheikh, who's with Microsoft. He's a cloud security consultant. His areas of expertise include Azure AD, identity protection, conditional access and MFA, PIM, Microsoft Sentinel, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. He also holds multiple Microsoft Cloud certification and has been recognized for his many accomplishments. The agenda for today. So we've already gone over the introductions. We're going to talk about Azure AD and 2022, Azure AD and Audit, compliance, YouAttest and Azure AD. We're going to go over a short demo as well as a Q&A session. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Sheikh. So again, he's going to talk about Azure AD, the adoption and relevance to compliance.
Awesome, Ashley. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join the webinar today. I know Ashley already did the introduction, so in that case, I would just like to jump right into it. Next slide, please. So the goal for this section of the webinar is to give you all a high-level overview of Azure Active Directory, right? We will talk about what Azure AD is, why Azure AD for your organization, right, and your enterprise environment, and why Microsoft as well. Why are companies choosing Microsoft for their identity and access management needs, what resources you can also connect to Azure AD, and then finally take a look at some of the advanced features that comes with the different licensing tiers that we have available for Azure Active Directory. Next. So what is Azure AD? Well, Azure Active Directory in a nutshell is a secure cloud-based identity and access management service. For an organization using Azure AD, employees can sign up for multiple services and access both internal and external resources anywhere over the cloud with a single set of login credentials, right? So some of the internal resources can be your native applications that are being used within your corporate network, the Azure portal for the management and administration of resources, Office 365 or Microsoft 365 applications, and many other SaaS applications and solutions as well. Next. So why Azure AD? Well, there are so many reasons why companies use Azure Active Directory as their primary cloud identity directory, right? I just wanted to highlight a few key points as to why using Azure AD will help drive business growth, help improve your overall identity posture. Identity is one of the most, if not the most important asset for every organization. And it's also reported that over 60% of breaches are now identity-based, which makes it very crucial for organizations to adopt a more robust and efficient way to manage and secure identities. And I believe that's where reporting and auditing, plays a huge role here or comes into play. Every organization deals with identities, like I said, and resources of various kinds. And these include entities, usernames, IP addresses, computers, to name a few. And these entities need to be managed in a variety of organizational or structural unit. In Active Directory or Azure AD, we call it organizational unit. That fits your organization, right? So Azure Active Directory can be used by your IT administrators to control access to apps and other resources based on your business requirement. And an example would be to configure MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, as a requirement for accessing resources within your network or corporate environment. You can also, back to that same slide, please. Yeah, you can also use Azure AD to automate the provisioning of users between on-premises and cloud resources, such as your cloud apps, you can also leverage the powerful security features of Azure Active Directory for identity protection, such as creating sign-in risk policies, which checks whether a particular sign-in attempt is legitimate or not. And also user risk policy, which identifies user accounts that may have compromised credentials. And there's also the MFA requirement policy as well, which determines how users can register for MFA, whether through the Microsoft Authentication app, through text messaging or phone call. The last one is you can also use Azure AD single sign-on, which is SSO capability, to connect to on-premises Active Directory for user and password synchronization, which allows your users to access cloud apps with their on-premises credentials as well. And Azure Active Directory can also be used to manage access to integrated cloud applications using the built-in access management feature that we have available in Azure Active Directory. Next slide. So why Microsoft, right? That's a good question. Well, I would say security. I know a lot of people may not think of Microsoft as a security company, but the company has invested billions of dollars in security. They made security a priority. And every solution and product made is heavily centered around security, especially Azure Active Directory, with its unique security features that work across the larger Microsoft security infrastructure that actually analyzes tons of data, terabytes of data on a daily basis for the purpose of remediation and proactive protection as well. So the comprehensive capability of Azure Active Directory is pretty much driven from working with security partners and customers, right? I mean, Microsoft, we love to engage our customers and get feedback on products and how to improve these products and solutions for continuous improvement in order to enhance the delivery of critical capabilities across the entire solution, right? Which includes authentication, governance, authorization, and identity and access management as well. So, Microsoft embraced the mindset of an open ecosystem when it comes to solutions and products we produce, right? We want to make sure that our products and solutions can work across a variety of platforms and existing infrastructure and tools as well. Overall, the key to why Microsoft and why Azure Active Directory boils down to security, in my opinion. And that's in the heart and soul of all the solutions in terms of a complete identity and identity management capability to help you protect all of your users and data within your organization. Next slide. So on this slide, I just wanted to talk about the resources you can actually connect to Azure Active Directory. Here we have a hybrid environment on the right. On the right is the cloud environment with Azure AD, Office 365, other cloud applications, and SaaS applications as well. And on the left is our on-premises environment, which includes an Active Directory domain service, an on-premises user who is trying to access a cloud application. And we also have Azure AD Connect, which is the tool that helps us or helps our customers synchronize with credential synchronization, actually, to form a hybrid environment, right? So it helps us with user and credential synchronization so that the on-prem user can access cloud applications using the same on-premises credentials instead of having to deal with multiple credentials for both the cloud and the on-premises environment, right? So you can connect your Azure AD with the on-premises resources that you may have if you have a hybrid environment, right? SaaS applications and solutions from other cloud providers as well can be connected to Azure Active Directory. Next. So this slide is an overview of some of the advanced features that comes with Azure Active Directory, which are license-based. As you can see, we have two tiers of licensing on this slide. We have Premium P1 and P2. I didn't include all of the features and capabilities on this slide, but there is a Microsoft documentation available that dives deep into the premium capabilities of Azure Active Directory, just in case you are interested in taking a look. So the premium license is designed to help organizations with more demanding identity and access management needs, right? It helps hybrid users to seamlessly access on-premises and cloud applications with regards to authentication, authorization, conditional access, which you can configure and restrict access to resources as well, such as cloud apps based on IP addresses, legacy authentication protocols such as IMAP, PAP, and SMTP protocols, and various governance controls as well. So the P2 license tier consists of every Azure AD capability enhanced with advanced identity protection and privileged identity management, which is called PIM. Some of the premium P2 capabilities include end-user self-service, which covers self-service password reset, self-service group management, and it also includes identity governance such as entitlement management, terms of use, just-in-time access for some of your critical resources or your resources that have a high blast radius. And when I say blast radius here, it means, resources that that could have a huge impact, if compromised, right? Event logging and reporting is also another, important feature of P2. It's another important capability. We also have the frontline worker capability as well, such as SMS sign-in and shared device sign-out for frontline workers, which all is included in the P2 license functionality and capability. That does it for me. If you have any questions, please drop it on the chat and I'll do my best to get to it. Thank you again. Back to Ashley.
Thank you so much, Sheikh. Next, we have Kyle. He's going to go over the Azure AD Compliance, so his view from the field.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, great overview of Azure Active Directory. At the end of the day, I think everyone here probably, understands very well, the world is shifting to the cloud, right? So, those things that we've been relying on in terms of on-premise infrastructure and identity, one, they're only going to last so long. And two, they're only going to cover a small percentage of what most organizations are adopting from an end user capability and access perspective. And so we need to keep in mind technologies like Azure AD, as we look at our security and compliance programs. So one of the big things that we see is, when we go and take a look at organizations, whether through like a security program assessment, a compliance gap analysis, something like that, is that, when we start talking about identity, most organizations say, yeah, we've got Active Directory. Well, as we kind of dive in, we find out that AD is really a mess, right? So a lot of organizations are not doing kind of the basic care and feeding that you might expect when it comes to their identity portfolio. So what do I mean by it's a mess? Well, there are tons of stale accounts, right? Organizations don't know, what those accounts are used for, and they're afraid to kind of disable them. They don't necessarily, they aren't able to rely on things like last login date and things like that. So they just kind of leave it, right? Next, they're probably not conducting a user access review. If they are, it's a cursory review performed by IT or by information security, which doesn't really have any business context, right? Similarly, if they're performing any review, usually it's ad hoc, it's not scheduled, it's not pervasive, right? It's not like, taking account of all of their accounts. It's not part of the process. Service accounts are unmapped. What that means is, somebody's created a service account, but they really don't know what it's there for. They also are afraid to change the password. So there's no idea, as to whether or not the account has been, compromised. Staff has, turned over the years, and yet everybody knows that account password because it hasn't changed in 6 years, right? We see this all the time. Privileged accounts and groups are unmonitored. There could be a change to a domain admin, or other elevated, group within AD, and nobody knows, right? They're not monitoring that. They're not getting alerts. Activity of specific accounts, privileged accounts are not being monitored. There are no alerts triggered. And then, of course, the growing concern here is that authentication is disparate. So, we've all talked about shadow IT over the last 10 to 15 years, right? As reliance on the cloud has grown. And what that means is that, people have set up, cloud-based, access, and they have not come back to integrate that with either their on-prem AD or to a cloud-based identity service like Azure AD. And what that means is that, one, it leads to poor user experience, right? Because people are assigned 27 different user IDs and passwords. And two, from an IT and IS perspective, and from a compliance perspective, the kind of user access reviews that are traditionally performed are not covering the emerging, SaaS-based platforms, cloud-based platforms. So again, a lot of the access that's out there is really unmonitored, right? So we don't know if accounts have been compromised. We don't know if accounts accounts have had their passwords changed. We don't know if people are using MFA because we just aren't looking. And then, like I said earlier, like one of the big things is that ownership of reviews is misplaced, right? And we'll talk later. I know Garrett's going to talk through kind of why you need to be doing access reviews from a compliance perspective. But the reality is, I think most organizations know they should. They just don't have the time. So what happens is that come audit time, somebody says auditors are on site next week, and somebody says, well, I guess I got to get done that user access review. And so IT says, well, I guess I'll do it. Well, most of the time, all they're doing is saying, is this user valid? They get a list of users or employees from HR. They go through the list of users in AD. And they say, all right, great, we're good. They kind of remove or disable those accounts that aren't on there because they all find some. And then, they go about their business. They aren't doing, reviews of entitlements. They aren't saying this user is set up appropriately, because they don't have that context. So it's a checkbox account review. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Ashley. So what does that mean, right? It means that, our visibility is limited, right? We're not doing the right, governance out there. You can kind of compare it to having a lock on your front door, but not knowing who has a key, right? Or not knowing, gosh, this key works all day, every day, versus this key only works during business hours, or this key works once a week when the cleaning person comes, or, so on and so forth. And without that context, right, we see a lot of account compromise, right? When you look back at kind of breaches over the last 10 to 15 years, they aren't changing dramatically. But what maybe used to be, a result of maybe a publicly available exploit or vulnerability that can be exploited, is now shifted to account compromise. We see massive phishing campaigns because it's easy to kind of spray and pray, right? You can send those emails out and hope that you're going to get one person to give you their credentials. Then you're going to hope that organization, doesn't have, MFA employed. Then you're going to hope that, once you land into an environment with that compromised account, you're going to be able to take over privileged accounts. And that's really what we see, is that organizations aren't doing the caring and feeding. So we have a lot of accounts out there that, shouldn't exist. We have accounts that don't have MFA enabled because nobody's checking. Once someone gets in, we have a lot of stale service accounts, which are easy to crack. Passwords are easy to crack. So that's how people are getting in. That's how they're maneuvering internal to an environment. We see it all the time. You can go to the next slide. So a couple of examples here, and want to make it really relevant to Azure AD. Azure AD, has great capability, right? Azure AD Connect is a great service that's going to go ahead and connect on-premise identities to cloud-based identities. But we've seen people kind of implement this poorly, or not implement it at all, right? And so organizations who kind of, dip their toe in the Azure cloud, right, start to create separate and distinct identities. And then they forget to review those. So maybe they're doing a review on-prem, but they're not doing the review in the cloud. And so what we need to make sure of is that we are doing that. In a recent example, we had a client contact us who basically said, hey, we've been breached. When we start looking at what happened, right, an account was created in the cloud. No one really knew about it. They had that account compromised because they weren't enabling MFA. They weren't doing, again, the basic blocking and tackling, the care and feeding of the Azure AD environment. And so the account was compromised, which allowed, the attacker to get into to their cloud-based environment and then pivot into their internal environment. Once this was identified, even it was kind of made worse. the organization realized, gosh, we've been attacked. Let's go ahead and change passwords. Well, they changed on-premise passwords. They didn't change cloud passwords because they didn't realize that they weren't in sync, right? This is really where Azure AD can really help, right? The challenge is you got to go into it, with the mindset of really kind of collapsing your identity platforms and really integrating that. Additionally, this is where a product like YouAttest can come in to be able to connect to all your identities so that when you do a user access review, you're factoring in all of your identity stores. So we really need to make sure of that. Go to the next slide, please. So when we talk about user access review, what do we need to do, right? What does that mean? So first and foremost, right, you need to be doing user access reviews. You need to be implementing kind of compensating controls because, it, as has been said for the past 10 plus years, right, it's not a matter of if you're breached, it's a matter of when, right? So let's take that approach and try to protect ourselves, right? Implement those compensating controls like MFA. Move to an identity store like Azure AD and really get single sign-on to make it easier for users, make it easier to control those identities, monitor those identities, make it easier for security, harder for the attacker. Implement a privileged access management solution. Again, look at PIM from Microsoft and other platforms there. But when you do that user access review, right, we need to make sure that we're factoring in all of our identity stores. That's on-premise and cloud. Again, where possible, synchronize or consolidate that down, right? Leveraging, a platform like Azure AD. Look at not only user account status, but look at group membership, such as, entitlements, right? Look at privileged groups. Look at password age. Have people change their passwords, within a period of time. Look at whether or not the account requires a password change. And then who needs to be reviewed, right? What types of users? Of course, our standard users. Additionally, we need to look at contractors, right? This is commonly left out. They're usually in a separate OU and people just kind of forget about them. Well, gosh, they're users too, right? Service accounts. IT doesn't really like to peel back the onion here. Service accounts are in, from what we see, basically the number one way of pivoting throughout the environment, right? Because most shops don't require, password changes. They aren't managing service account passwords with AD technology. Instead, it's a password that was set 7 years ago and forgotten. And then, of course, your privileged accounts, which sometimes service accounts are set as privileged as well. But you want to look at those privileged accounts because that's where the bulk of the damage is going to be done. So focus on those accounts. Make sure that you're monitoring, changes to those groups and go from there. And you can go to the next slide, Ashley. So again, what we really want to do is manage your credential sprawl, right? Leverage an SSO type platform, an IGA platform like Azure AD, so that you can really move to centralized authentication. Years past, this would have been an on-prem AD environment. As we shift to the cloud, it just doesn't cut it. We need to go ahead and move to something like Azure AD. And then beyond that, extend your access reviews. If you're not performing them, perform them. If you are performing them, extend them to cloud-based identities and identity repositories. Reviewing those access methods and user accounts that are in all of your cloud-based repositories and SaaS platforms. So there you go. I think that probably covers it. Ashley, you can move to the next slide. And we're good. Thank you very much for your time.
Next, we're going to switch over to Garrett, who's the CEO over at YouAttest. He's going to go over what actually is needed for Azure AD access reviews.
First of all, let me say, great work there, Sheikh. And Kyle, I'm going to give your minute 12 to minute 22 of this to the marketing people I've been talking to who asked me yesterday, so why do customers need to do this? And that was brilliant. The way Kyle laid it out in there and said, we all know Azure AD, that is the future. The cloud's the future. The way Sheikh laid it out, that this is the product that's going to solve your on-premise, your in-cloud, and your mobile apps. Okay, great. But what's going wrong with the implementation? How are people doing? That's what Kyle laid out. Okay, let me talk about identity governance because it's one of those words that people say, and I'm going to give some definition to it. First of all, identity governance, okay? What users are allowed to? Next, that's what we're going to focus on. What users are allowed to? Okay, there's two parts of IGA, and this is where the world gets kind of confused. All right. Okay, when we think of IGA, we think of the companies that do real good job, and Microsoft up there with the SCIM that say, okay, I have one centralized identity. I have to push it out to the other 15, 20, 400 resources that use this identity. That's the first part. The second part, though, is access governance. Access governance is, next slide, access governance is the actual process. Let's just go to the next one. That's to the access governance. Access governance is where the gap is. Access governance is, okay, someone in the enterprise has given someone a resource. Okay, that's good. Or maybe that's not good, guys. Maybe it's someone who shouldn't have the financial records. Or maybe it's one of the, what was a number I saw yesterday, 3.5 million applications that are compromised. It was some count done by Kaspersky, the applications that are compromised that was able to get into our systems and escalate privileges, okay? Therefore, someone needs to do some governance on these identities and on these roles and permissions. And that's what I said is they've forgotten. I had great notes when Kyle was talking. One of them, he said straight out, is companies are doing access reviews next, Ashley, but they're checkbox reviews. Because we know this is, from NIST, and then it gets puts into the actual guidances. There's PRAC-4 that says we should be doing access reviews. And the reason we should do these is next, Ashley, is PRAC-6 that says principle of least privilege. Everyone on this call, we're all good at our jobs. We're all intelligent people. I don't, one of the things about doing this company and talking to people, everyone's intelligent. We know that we should be doing access review. We know why. We know we should be enforcing privilege of principle of least privilege, giving people the least amount of access. The how is where we're struggling. Next, actually. So when we do an access review, we should be reviewing the users, reviewing the roles, reviewing the applications, and then certifying. But the real question about the process is, who does that certifying? And I just looked at when Kyle was speaking about certifications. We hand it off to IT. Okay, IT can't be doing certifications. Everyone in this call knows that's not best practice. Segregation of duties. IT has the rights to change. The risk managers have to quantify. I don't care if the risk manager is internal or external, has to quantify that someone outside of IT actually certified this role. That's what an access review is. Next. And that's what's quantified in all of our privileges. I guarantee most people on the call are under one of these guidances. So that's quantified. That's quantified. It says we should be doing it. Now what we have to do is tell you how to do it a better way. And I'm just going to leave the slide up for a sec because there's something going on in our industry. It's 2022, as we said, right? Every time there's a hack, every time there's a new slew of hacks, new guidances are forced upon us. And that's where we at YouAttest just created a white paper that might be controversial, but it says, basically states, are the IT compliances helping the hackers? And what meant by that is, if enterprises who are going to be hit with more of these compliances every day, CMMC now for the DoD contractors, if we're pulling people off of IT to meet these compliance and do evidence collection, we're in trouble. That's leaving us vulnerable. That's why we need a better way. Next. So I'm going to summarize this and we're going to get into the product. Value of access reviews, of course, it's what we've just talked about. It's about the industry standards. But there's also other real key security benefits. Monitoring and mitigating privilege creep. That's the concept of, hey, we are our own worst enemies. By giving identities constantly more and more privileges, we make the hacker's job easier. All they have to do is get one of these accounts and there's too many privileges and they go, okay. And then the other one, which is just someone's got to be watching the watchers. Okay. What is the practice in your enterprise to watch the IT system administrators, what they have granted? That's what an access review is. Kyle mentioned something that we're doing more and more of, managing licensing costs. So you've got your identity store of record, right? That's great. What about all the other applications out there, all the SaaS applications, all the other applications? What is do we have additional license costs on those? And we have a product called Silo Applications, okay? And then lastly, for the concept of access control, we all know that we by quantifying this, we should be quantifying access to privileged groups, right? What about the users that we have made quasi-privileged accounts by handing them permissions? That's got to be spotted, and that's got to be negated. Next.
Okay, so next, Garrett and I are both going to talk about access reviews for Azure AD.
Yeah, via the YouAttest product. Fantastic. Take it away, Ashley.
All right, so what is IGA? IGA is collecting the same data as Azure AD. So there's multiple connectors, multiple agents, multiple configurations. So what we don't want is what happened with SolarWinds.
Exactly, Ashley. Yeah, this is what the alternative is. If you're not doing a manual, is okay. Well, let's drop in a big IGA product and let's go to town and create some new connectors, and voila, that's what we don't want to do. Next.
So what is YouAttest? So we're a rapidly deployed IGA product. So I'll let Garrett take it from here.
Yeah, so we connect directly into Azure AD, directly into it, into your ISORs. I use that term, identity store of record, right? And I'm not worried whether you also have, on-premise AD, because Microsoft's done a pretty damn good job of connecting AD up to Azure AD, okay? So we got our connector to the cloud, clean and encrypted. Next slide. Simple, secure SAML deployment, right, Ashley?
Absolutely. Clean and easy.
Yeah, clean and easy. Our best time we ever been called a liar is when someone did a deployment with us and said, your reference call said this would be done in 10 minutes. And, everyone's in a bad mood when they start an IT project. And we knocked it out in 3 minutes. Goes, yeah, I have to call you a liar. That was only 3 minutes. That's the way deployment should go. You have access reviews. You got to get this stuff. You got to get rest managers. Taking 6 months for a POC of a project isn't real and isn't doable anymore. Next.
So the YouAttest IGA functionality for Azure AD. So like Garrett said, we have full featured support of Azure AD. So what does this encompass? So it encompasses app reviews, group reviews, user reviews, auto delegation, auto scheduling, multiple reviewers, revocation reports. So all this stuff, what does it do? It saves everyone time, which in turn saves everyone money. I'm going to go on to the next slide.
So now get Kashif out and let's do a demo of this. Then we'll take some questions.
Absolutely. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Kashif.
Thank you, Ashley. Just let me go ahead and share my screen real quick. Please let me know when you can see it.
Beautiful.
Okay, so do you see the dashboard or what do you see at the moment?
See the dashboard, 100%.
Okay, great. So this is the YouAttest dashboard or the GUI interface that Garrett was talking about. It's simple, lets you see all the audits and campaigns that you'll be creating inside of YouAttest. But let me just quickly jump onto the actual essence of this demonstration, which is the audits. Let's say, let me show you first how easy it is, as Garrett showed you and Ashley as well, to integrate your YouAttest tenant with your Azure AD platform. So once you have these three pieces of information from your Azure tenant, namely tenant ID, which you can get from your Azure tenant, your client ID, and there will be a secret key as well that Azure is going to provide you. Once this key information is in there, and if you want to have the single sign-on enabled through SAML, you will need to have an X509 certificate from your Azure tenant. Once you put that key in there, you're good. all you have to do is save that information, and within a matter of a few minutes, everything will be integrated with your Azure AD. And then after that, you can perform all the audits, whether you want to do an application audit, a group audit, or a user individual audit. You can perform that using YouAttest, which is integrated now with your Azure tenant. So for this demo, just let me go ahead and show you how you will create an application audit. All you have to do is create a new audit, which will ask you for information like, what's the API source, which will be your tenant, Azure tenant. Give it an audit name, and then select a target date by which you need to complete the application audit or the access review for those applications, and click next. On the next page, it's going to ask you and provide you a set of information. For example, let me just go ahead and do that just for you to see. There are only 3 on my demo screen, but whatever number of applications you will have on Azure, it's going to display over here, and you can select multiple or a single application that you want to run the audit for. And once you do, select those, you can go to your listings page on the application audits, and the system will create a campaign for you, which will look like this. You can see on the screen. Once you click on that, it will actually take you inside that campaign, where it will have all the user data fetched from your Azure AD for those applications that you have selected initially. So the information, if you can look at the screen, can you see it, Garrett, or should I zoom it in?
100%. We're seeing everything you see. There you go.
Great. So if you look at the first user, this has been pulled from your Azure AD with all the attributes like his email ID, what's the application role. Let me just switch it to another screen.
Let me interject and say, what's really important about this, people, is this is true SOD, right? We have the risk manager and a reviewer looking at this, not the wonderful and overburdened Azure AD IT admin. That's the way an access review needs to be done. Keep going.
Exactly. And if you take a look at the information that you're getting from here, it's the manager field is the most important one here to tell you who is this individual reporting to, or it can be who's the owner of that application, so that he could go ahead and review the access for that particular user and do the attestation that way. Now, when you go to the action bar, it provides you 3 basic actions that a reviewer needs, either to certify an access for a particular user, revoke access, or if he or she is not the one who should be doing the attestation for these users and applications, he can always or she can always delegate it out to the people who are relevant or who actually are responsible for doing this task. One of the feature is, in addition to delegating out to people out there, we provide you the feature for auto delegate. What it does, if you have this manager information handy and it is in there in the user profile, it will pick up that information. It will start sending out and pushing out emails to those managers responsible for these users, letting them know that they have to participate now in an audit. We'll provide them with a link. When they open up that link, they will have the same view that you are looking at on the screen right now, but with only one difference, that they'll be only able to see the users that have been assigned to them, unlike an admin who can see everything inside that campaign. So if you have 6 users that you're responsible for, you'll be only seeing 6 users and doing the attestation that way, either by certifying, revoking access, or if you think somebody else in your team or outside of your team should do the attestation as well, and you want to include those, you can further delegate out to those people as well. So that's the capability YouAttest provides the admins as well as the primary reviewers, that they can further delegate out. Now, this is something that you are doing the attestation for a particular application that you have selected for this audit, but at the same time, in order to make a rational decision, for any reason you want to see what other applications this particular user has access to, we provide you that functionality as well by clicking on this small box here, which performs, in a big way by showing you and pulling the information from your Azure AD, showing you what other applications he has access to, so you can have a fair idea whether to revoke or certify the access for this particular user. Also, in addition to applications, you can also see what other groups any particular individual is part of as well inside of your Azure AD. So that will bring information back from your identity source record, whatever it is, in this case, Azure AD, and you can have a calculated decision if it comes to revoking the access for certain users. Now, once you certify or revoke, perform that action, these columns will show you the information or the action taken for every individual in this case, and also the person who took that action. In this case, it's the audit user, that's me, but if it's going to be a manager or a domain admin or any risk manager, is going to show his or her name here to trace it back to, what happened. And this is when it says when did it happen, actually, the timestamp, to be very precise, to the minute, the hour, and the date as well, so that you could have a digital trail back to, where you want to see who performed what and at what time. So while you're inside of this audit, you can also click on these actions just to see what happened in there and who did what. So it gives you an inside view as well. Let's say you don't want to do the audit delegate because you think there should be other people who should be part of this access review as well. You can do the individual delegate function as well, where you can have multiple reviewers with and or functionality, whether all the members of that group should be doing the access review, or you just want anyone who comes in first and do the access review and then get it over and done with and mark it as complete. So you have that functionality to send it out to multiple people out there, or to a group if inside of your organization, if you have created a group whose sole responsibility is to do the attestations, so you can assign it to a group as well. Once they complete the task, you will have the progress showing you here at the status bar, whether it's 100% complete, or if there are any reviewers who have not completed the task. Also, the system will keep sending the nag emails to those users who have been assigned this task and they haven't completed it yet. So that's done automatically.
Hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we cut there? Because I think you did a great job of giving an overview. We got Ashley's pinging me. We got a bunch of questions, and
sure,
we'll leave something for people to ping us directly at Kashif, and we give one-on-one demos, walk through customer use cases. But as Kashif, it just touched the surface of this. This is a fully built 2.5 years project of taking nothing but the input of risk managers and what they want to see in an access review. Right, Kashif?
Absolutely. Thanks, Garrett.
Thanks. Great job. And just ping us, we'll give you more. All right, Ashley, let's get to those questions, eh?
All right. Thank you, Kashif. Okay. One second, please. All right, our questions. So Kyle, what are the consequences of not auditing your Azure AD?
Well, I mean, I think the consequences are really, kind of far-reaching, right? Number one, if you are subject to, compliance requirements like SOC 2, SOX, SOC 1, even, you're going to fall short. Things like PCI, the alphabet soup of compliance really requires all that. And so not doing it, is bad. So that's number one. And number two, is kind of the real security concern, right? I mean, again, every day, every week, we're hearing over at Trace3, a new client coming on board saying, please help us, right? We've been hit with ransomware. We've been breached. What is it that, that caused that? More often than not, it's, some, poor identity hygiene. And so there are real far-reaching ramifications, to this. So it needs to get done.
Perfect. Thank you. Sheikh, I have a two-part question for you. So first, how is Microsoft 365 and Azure AD related? And is it always for Microsoft 365?
I was on mute. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now. All good.
Yeah, absolutely. So Microsoft 365 uses Azure AD to manage user identities behind the scenes. So like if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, you automatically are also subscribed for the free Azure AD subscription as well. So the two go hand in hand. You can, use M365 for provisioning your users in M365 while have that visibility in Azure Active Directory as well, with resources, that you also have in M365, right? Especially when it comes to the Defender suites like Defender for Endpoint. You can have your endpoints in M365 Defender suites and also have those endpoints in Azure Active Directory as a visibility, throughout the overall ecosystem, right, with M365 and Azure Active Directory. So the second part question was,
Is it for Microsoft 365 Azure AD?
Sorry, Ashley, you did cut there for a little bit.
Is Azure AD always used for Microsoft 365?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's the short answer for that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Garrett, question for you.
Okay.
YouAttest, how do we count our licenses?
License skins are the entities, and let me define that. Okay. You got, we had one of ours was a 19,000 user project. Well, it was not. It was a 500,000 user project. 500,000 users were in the directories that had to be quantified. Then we had another project was 150 users. 150 users, whether they're internal or partners or B2B, and they have access to the systems. What's cool about our things, we don't care how many applications you're auditing. We don't care how many roles they have. We're just counting the entities of the users being audited. So that could be 100 to 500,000.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jake, another question for you. Can I sync up my service accounts and admin accounts to Azure AD from on-prem AD for review?
Yes, you can. You can use the Azure AD Connect tool that we have to synchronize users and passwords, which includes your service accounts and admin accounts from your on-premises to Azure Active Directory. So yeah, the answer is yes, it's absolutely possible with the help of the tool that we have called Azure AD Connect.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because then that allows us to go in and easily audit these privileged accounts. And that's exactly what the YouAttest product is designed for. And then a Trace3 type consultant and can help you out on that to quantify and then do a little probably identity remediation to improve, as Kyle says, your identity hygiene.
Perfect. Kyle, what are the Trace3 audit practices for SOCs?
So we help organizations kind of all sizes, I should say, kind of go through and identify what are their IT general controls, really kind of define what the control activities are that meet those requirements, identify ownership. We help organizations first and foremost with what we call GRC program development, really kind of going through that process of identifying, okay, here's the requirement. What is it that you do to meet the requirement? Who owns that control activity? What does success look like? How frequently should you review that? We can also help organizations do like gap analysis for SOCs and other frameworks. And then, for those frameworks that require certification, we can then kind of provide a warm handoff to either their auditor or a certification provider / auditor that we work with. So we can help kind of get the process started, and we can help carry the client all the way through. Obviously, user access review being a massive part of SOX compliance.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot again. I know you touched on this, but what are the information security ramifications of manual access reviews?
Gosh, we see this a lot. There are, kind of wide-ranging ramifications to that. First off, what we see is that it's just a heavy lift, right? So people who are trying to tackle this manually, as soon as they start kind of digging in, they find that it's really hard, right? It takes a long time. And that they're not getting buy-in from those people who are the managers. One of the best things I think about YouAttest is the delegated, functionality, right? Usually the risk manager, the person who maybe owns, the YouAttest platform internally with an organization, is not the right person to be doing the actual, review. They're going to go ahead and take that review and they're going to sign off on it. They're going to make sure that the review was conducted. But that needs to be delegated. There needs to be business context. When you start seeing this thing done, manually, it usually ends up being the same IT person who went ahead and created the script to go ahead and pull the user accounts saying, to heck with it. I'm just going to go ahead and sign off on all this saying it's correct, which really isn't a review of any kind, right? It's not providing any security value. And now the ball is dropped. It turns into a checkbox item. And you've got all these accounts still out there that really, need remediation.
And sorry, another two-part question for you, Kyle. So how does regular scheduled access reviews with YouAttest improve the security posture of the enterprise?
I mean, massively. I think what it does is number one, it provides kind of like a cultural benefit, right? It starts making it, because it's so easy to do with YouAttest, it can be done more frequently. Anytime something is done more frequently, it becomes habit, it becomes routine, it becomes, part of that culture, that identity matters. Beyond that, right, what you really are doing is you're catching one of the things that changes all the time. One of the problems with identity is that you're adding new users all the time. You should be removing users all the time, right? Unfortunately, people come and go, especially when you factor in contractors and things of that nature. Even with service accounts, right? Applications need to be decommissioned. And so you need to be finding those things that change. So one of the things we tell people all the time is that when you start reviewing controls, those controls that need to be reviewed with the most frequency are those that have the biggest rate of change. And identities change a lot. And that means that doing it manually, you're building this process every single time, right? Doing it in an automated fashion with YouAttest and leveraging the capability that they have to make it so easy allows you to do it, with ease, with a high frequency, so that you're going to catch those things that are wrong with your identity stores, right, more rapidly, which gives you a shrinking time, or gives the attacker kind of a shorter time to actually adversely impact your organization, right? Gives you a better chance.
Perfect. All right, that's going to conclude our webinars for today. I just want to thank Sheikh and Kyle for joining us, and of course Kasha with our demo, and Garrett, our CEO. If you have any further questions, our contact information is right here, our website, our phone number. You can reach us at sales@youattest.com, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheikh. Thanks, Kyle. Great performance, and we'll get the slides and the video up. Sorry, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye.
All the best.